Hello, welcome everybody. How are you all today? This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Thank you for tuning in. Going live right now from the Yucatan Peninsula in Playa del Carmen, and have a special guest today. I'm excited to be starting this series because this is actually the beginning of a series that I'm going to be doing in which I'm interviewing authors authors from the Common Sentience series, that is the book series that Ariel from Sacred Stories, that you've probably been introduced to by now a few times on my platform, has pioneered. She is not, this is just one series of books, published many other books. And this one is a specific project in which there is a main author, let's say, per book on specific topics. And then the rest of the book is pretty much filled up with individuals that have their own experiences and testimonials of what they actually experienced in relation to that topic. And I'll give you an example. My book is sound. So I'm doing all this information on sound and frequency. And then I have around 25 individuals, some of you probably tuning in right now, that submitted stories on their tangible experiences with sound. So that is the overall project. And today is the first of a series of interviews in which I'm going to be bringing every single month a different guest from that author series so that we can go deeper into the topic, show about not only their journey into getting into this awareness, but also to let you know about the book that is either out or is going to be coming out, and bring awareness to this project. So today's guest is Dr. Stephen Farmer, and I'm going to just go ahead and just read a little bit about him. Then we'll get into his journey a little bit more, and I want Stephen kind of just to tell me how he got to where he is. But first of all, I see a lot of you are chatting in the chat room here. Please go ahead and say hi. And if you would like to, let us know where on or off planet you're from. Leave that in the chat room right there. All right, let's get into this. So Dr. Stephen Farmer is our guest for today. He is a best-selling author, licensed psychotherapist, shamanic healer, somatic therapist, ordained minister, and former college professor. His extensive experience in the fields of psychotherapy and shamanic therapy allows him to provide his clients with a comprehensive and highly individualized counseling experience. Dr. Farmer's unique approach was created over the course of many years of this intensive study and practice. His status as a spiritual leader and psychospiritual healer is the result of his in-depth studies of spiritual transformation, trauma recovery, shamanism, hypnotherapy, breathwork, and energy psychology. Dr. Farmer's practices are grounded in many years of college studies, culminating in the form of 3 degrees, including a BA in psychology from the University of California, an MA in counseling psychology from Chapman University, and a PhD from Madison University. And I'm excited to be talking to you because not only of your book, that is coming out, that is something that I'm definitely interested in, but I love the fact that you have dabbled in both worlds when it comes to spirituality, mainstream science, got these degrees and information kind of to back up what you are investing your energy in, which is the upliftment of humanity through the different aspects that you bring to the table. So welcome, Dr. Farmer. Thank you so much for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure. Believe me. Thank you for having me on the show.
For sure. So let's start out with you just telling us how you got into this journey. Let's just say the spiritual journey, right? Because you definitely were going to school. Was this something that was always in your reality, just this shamanistic awareness, consciousness, or was this something that came after you graduated school?
Oh, I wish I could say it's always been with me, but that's not the case. I think, like many people, it was after a period of suffering. As part of the
Mm.
deal that we sometimes go through that kind of stuff. Here on the planet. Being in our human bodies or being humans, and it really prompted a spiritual exploration. Which again, I've heard this similar story. In with different clothing or different specifics, but that something has to maybe kick our rear end
Mhm.
sometimes to get us to heed the call to this awakening process. And that was certainly the case many years ago. I'm not even sure how long ago it was. It was some time ago. I got a divorce. I had 2 small children. I didn't know who I was, where I was. I was actually doing psychotherapy at the time. I had a pretty active process. I was able to put all of my stuff aside, and do what I had to do with the clients. Anyway, one thing led to another. I'm going to try and keep this condensed, Neil. Um, the process was going through various churches, uh, Church of Religious Science. You know, that
Mhm.
was the start of the awakening process, and then a group called Emissaries of Divine Light, which was a whole different
Yeah, I
deal.
know those guys.
You know, you know them, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think they're still around. And then
Colorado, yeah.
I got called to a group in Vancouver, which turned out to be later, in retrospect, a cult, but it really did. Helped me embody my spirituality. Would be the best way to say it.
Mm.
And then from there, shamanism came to me, and I do say it that way intentionally. It was a book, Way of the Shaman, by Michael Harner, partner that at the time that told me, "Hey, go do the 2 day course." I did a 2 day introductory course with him, and I walked out. I just went out there and I was on fire. I said, "This is it. This is my next step." And then one thing led to another from the practice and the study of shamanism, the trainings. I did a number of trainings, including a 3 year training in with Harner's Foundation for Shamanic Studies. Uh, I had written some books as a psychotherapist. My very first book has been revived, 25-year anniversary edition. The others have
Nice.
sort of died a slow death, which is fine. And I didn't publish anything for a long time. And then when I was introduced to shamanism, went along that path, that was like click some things like, oh, I can do something that's related to shamanism, but
Mhm.
qualified and say you don't have to be interested in shamanism. Sacred ceremony,
Mhm.
and then the topic of the day, spirit animals. You know,
Right.
I'm fairly well known for that topic. I'm not the only writer about it, but I certainly am fairly well known with a body of work. Uh, Ending up, I won't say the end, but ending up with this book. You know, the
Mhm.
animals are, like you said, common sentience, of which you're one of the authors also. I think we got 10 of us or something like that with
Yeah.
various topics. And as you very well stated, um, the uniqueness of this book is I'm really the featured author. You know, I'm the named author.
Mhm.
But I think the largest contribution really comes from people who have submitted their stories about that particular topic, whatever it might
Yes.
be. In this case, encounters, the subtitle, Personal Tales of Encounters with Spirit Animals.
Mhm.
So, and they're great stories. I've read all of them, and they're amazing stories. And I think it brings it home, makes these elements like sound. You're
Yeah.
specializing in sound and vibrational work in that way. Angels, you know, that's another topic. Ancestors, etc. And it goes down the line to these various topics. It's a absolutely ingenious idea
It
because I
is.
think it opens the door for other people who might be interested in this topic or that topic but don't know a lot about it. And then the element of um, personal tales, some of which are like mind blowing, I must say.
Mm. It's really new paradigm, like the collaboratory effect that these books have, and your book that we're talking about right now, is it's not just one person being this person, on a pedestal that we're reading, but it's coming together, and sharing stories like around a campfire, like a collaboratory effort, which kind of gets rid of the whole hierarchical element of the old paradigm. So that's why I really jumped on board with it.
Yeah, it's like it occurred to me a couple days ago. It's like there's a community
Yeah.
that's been brought together, you know, with different, you know, variations in terms of what the primary interest might be
Yep.
on the spiritual path or the mystical path. You know, I think that it takes the mystical path and says, okay, let's ground it in real experience. So we
Hmm.
all share that, you know, in some way. And spirit calls to us in different ways. You know, my calling
Exactly.
happened to be shamanism, and then one aspect of it is learning to communicate. Now, it is animals, but it's bigger than that. It's communicating with
Yes.
nature, the natural world, finding spiritual sustenance from the natural world, being able to give back something to the natural world. And
Yeah, I love
animals,
that.
I think animals, Neil, are, how would I say, it's fairly simple, you know, to be attuned to the possibility that an animal might be bringing you a spiritual message.
Yeah.
It helps you conduct your life and sustain yourself on a life path with that sort of guidance. We get
Yeah.
messages all over. It's not just the animals, but animals are accessible. They're all around us, you know,
Yeah.
symbols or the actual physical animal.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I, for one, if I see a certain animal repeatedly, right, I'll definitely go to the internet and search, what does this animal mean? Why am I seeing it? You know, and I would say that every single time I found out the information, it definitely was in alignment with what was happening right now. So it's just, it goes to the whole thing of we are all just one consciousness, and everything is a reflection of that. And things show up in your reality when they're supposed to, in the way they should, right?
Well stated too, Neil. Very
Mhm.
well stated. Yeah, it's like where there's a the word that I have absolutely, I love words first off, but a word that I think exemplifies what you just described is collaboration.
Mhm.
So there's a continual collaboration with other expressions of spirit, or you could say consciousness. And the animals that are expressions of that consciousness may come to us in a particular way. My teaching basically is when an animal shows up in an unusual way and or repeatedly, like you were describing, then that's a pretty big deal. That you could say it's like spirit, and then coming through that particular form and expressing in the physical form
Mhm.
then becomes a representative of that particular spirit of that animal, or I sometimes say collective consciousness of the animal that
Yeah.
is there to deliver you a message in that collaboration of consciousness. And it's
Hmm.
magic. It is
Yes, beautiful.
magic.
You know, I was going to specifically ask you a question. What does shamanism entail? But I feel like you're unveiling it here. And now, as you're speaking, I'm actually connecting the dots because we're talking about animal communication, and that has to do with spirit animals, which definitely indigenous shamans had been talking about. Oh, that's pretty much where we get the information from. There's about the ancients talking about spirit animals. So, my question for you is like, and just in relation to shamanism as a whole, what are spirit animals, and why do you say that there are spiritual allies?
Well, one thing that shamanism brings, and there's been just either initially a slow growth, I think maybe 30, 35 years ago for the Western, us Westerners, that has grabbed hold of us because it is taking into account the spirits of the earth and the physical elements of the earth. We've sort of lost our way, in terms of our overall relationship. That deep, we are connected, but we don't incorporate that other than maybe as a conversation or a philosophy. But what we are beginning to do is learn how to relate to that tree is not just a tree. Yes, it's a tree, a physical tree. But if I tune into it a certain way, there's a sense of kinship, with the tree. Same thing with animals and anything on this earth, and even in the sky above us. We're all interrelated. We're all connected. Again, those are just words. But once in a while, what happens, I know for me, and I think probably for a lot of people listening to this, once in a while, taking a walk, especially a walk outdoors in nature, there's a moment of what I would call awe, AWE. And it is beyond words. It's the experience, almost an ecstatic experience of recognition of, I get chills as I talk about it. That's a body memory of that experience I just had last night. Just wow, look at the tree waving, its leaves. Look up in the stars, and it puts things in perspective. Plus having that experience is a reminder of our interconnectedness, a body reminder, a physical reminder. So shamanism is more of an earth oriented practice. It's actually a healing practice, and it is comes from, of course, various indigenous communities where, oh, we're connected, of course, duh, yeah. And usually in a tribe or community like that, there was, and even us, with our fair and white skin, that we could go back, centuries and centuries ago. There probably was an ancestor that was the shaman,
Yeah.
man or woman, and that's the go-to person. And their gift really was to be able to work with helping spirits, to bring healing to the community, the tribe, the individual, the family, whatever. And so the largest healing is the healing of this illusion that we're separated.
Mhm.
So by working with spirit animals and, in a broader sense, nature spirits, we start to attune to that reality that we are connected, that spirit shows up in so many different forms. It's not that I'm a spiritual being in a human body. I am spirit in expression,
Yes.
but
I love that.
physicalized, just like the animals that come to us physicalized,
Hmm.
that they're connected to the larger consciousness of that particular animal. The hummingbird
Yeah.
isn't just a, well, it is, it's just a hummingbird that hovers right in front of me. But there's something bigger going on when they come in this unusual way.
Wow. So what are some ways to discern, like if you have a some animal spirit message, like in dream state or in real life, what is a way to decipher and discern what the messages are?
No, it's a really good question, and there's a handful of different ways. And I like that you brought up the dream state in the dream time, because
Mhm.
it's also the symbol of the animal that we could see repetitively. Or again, in an unusual, a picture of the animal, the dream of the animal, somebody talking about the animal, a dog barking to emphasize what I just said. I like an exclamation point. Make me shout. All right, that's enough. Anyway, first off, yeah, what you did, and I think the simplest way, yeah, go to the internet, pick up a book. You know, it could be one of my books or it could be somebody else's. It doesn't matter, but there are resources like that where you can look up. Let's take that example of the hummingbird, or another one might be coyote, because we have coyotes here that show up in the neighborhood where there's ravines here and canyons nearby. So they live there and then they come out into the suburban neighborhood from time to time, much to the chagrin of people who own little dogs because they have to protect them. Um, hummingbird. Okay. That hummingbird that flies, and I've heard this story many times. Look it up. What could it mean? Could mean maybe like in one of my books it says here's some possible meanings. It doesn't say what the meaning is, but possible meanings.
Mm.
It could be lighten up. My power animal oracle cards, hummingbirds in it, and that's the message. Lighten up, you know, like. And I base that on when you see a little hummingbird, I dare you not to smile. You know, it puts a lightness, and watch the bird flitting around. That's another one, is that maybe you're flitting around too much. They also drink from the flowers, the nectar from the flowers. Sweetness. You need more sweetness in your life. Their flexibility, their ability to fly any direction, you know, including backwards, you know, which is an anomaly amongst birds. Excuse me, I had to cough. I wanted to mute it for a sec. So that's one way. Look it up. Okay. Another one. This is a more of a deductive process. You deduce from the characteristics of the animal what the message might be. That's another way to discern it. Coyote. You know, they typically operate in the dark. They're very stealthy. They might. They're often known as a trickster, like raven is also sometimes known as the trickster. So there may be some deceit or some trickery going on, or you're deceiving somebody. Those are possible messages from a coyote based on the characteristics of the animal. So I suggest, yeah, go read about the characteristics and see, you know, see what tags you, what pulls you. The third way, and Neil, I think this is what I'd like people to get to eventually, because there's a tie-in with the way that our ancestors operated. They would receive direct messages. And one of the principles of shamanic work is direct revelation. You know, yes, there's the hummingbird. Yes, there's coyote. Yes, there's dolphin. Okay, the dolphin. What? How can I tune in to get the message? And here's exactly how you do it, gang. Try this out. Close your eyes. Okay, again, using any of those examples I just mentioned. Close your eyes and say telepathically, communicate to the spirit of that hummingbird, the spirit of that coyote, the spirit of that dolphin. And you simply ask, what's the message? Then you wait and pay attention to what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And that could be inside, your inner vision, your inner voice. It could be externally, somebody who's talking about going on a vacation. You may hear that again and again over the day. You hear in your inner voice, okay, it's time to play more. Again, back to the hummingbird. Hey, dude, lighten up. You're getting too serious. It's not that serious, really. So that's the one. That's the way I'd like people to ultimately discover what the message is from that being that is a representative for the spirit of that being, and then uh, trust what you get. That's a big one right there. Trust what you get. May or may not make sense right away. Trust
Right.
it. Let it simmer a little bit, percolate a little bit, and eventually the meaning will become apparent to you. I
Right.
call it resonates with you. It clicks in some way, and you go, oh, okay, got it. Now then, what you do with it's up to you. What you do with it's up to you. There's nobody watching you, monitoring, etc.
Yeah.
But it's a valuable way to learn how to navigate through this life, especially with all the stuff that's been going on, and perhaps what we're facing here in the near future.
Mhm. So basically, tune in to the experience, right, and the animal, and see what comes to you, what messages it is. Like, put yourself to the side and just allow the energy in the channel to flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. I One of my experiences, and I again, Errol, in this book, I'm going to show it one more time. That's it.
Yeah, no, at least a couple more times, please.
A couple more times. Okay, Common Sentience, Animals, Personal Tales of a Kind. Shameless plug, but it's a good book. My daughter and my 11-year-old granddaughter, they read a story from the book each night. Isn't that
Wow,
sweet? Yeah.
that's
And
awesome.
the 11-year-old is just like, she's a really good reader too. So she reads a
Mhm.
story to her mom,
How cool.
or with her mom more accurately. So let's see where I want to get refocused here because I veered off on that story of my daughter and my granddaughter. You had a question.
Yes. Well, let's get to another question. Some comments in the YouTube, right? And someone's in. I know we can't go through every animal, but someone in particular has asked about a couple of different animals. Maybe you can just tune into if do you
Okay.
know what kind of symbolism would be behind them. And let's go with spiders and snakes.
I don't like spiders and snakes. That's an old song that comes to mind immediately. That's why, actually, again, listening to and paying attention to what happens, that's what happened just then. Is it's an old song that came to me. And so possibly that could be part of the message or one of the messages from spiders and snakes. I'm going to go into it a little bit more, but I find that interesting and possibly synchronistic. It might be telling the person who wrote this, you got to sing more. You know. Second, you don't have to like them to respect them. Some people just are appalled by spiders and or snakes. That's one thing. So I'm gonna put that aside now and go into this. Let's start with spiders. Characteristics of spiders. What do they do? Well, one of the things they're popular and famous for is weaving the web. What you could deduce from that is storytelling, tales, connections, that you need to feel more connected, that the spider could drop, from a thread, right in front of you if possible. And what they're doing though is they're weaving something together with that web. So what do storytellers do? I'm going to clear my throat just one sec. What do storytellers do? They weave tales. So what this is suggesting, again, it has to resonate with you, uh, the person who posted this. It doesn't mean you have to like spiders. It's also that it's time for you to tell your story, just like we're talking about here, people telling their stories. Start writing fiction, nonfiction, but in some way relate your stories, the weaving of your life tales. Something could be fiction or nonfiction. I'm overstressing that because I think that's one of the primary messages when spider shows up for you. The second thing, if the spider that shows up for you, if you can find out whether they're poisonous or not, if they are poisonous, if they are poisonous spiders, it could be a caution or a heads up. It doesn't mean physical poison necessarily, but there might be something poisonous in a relationship. that you're involved in, friendship or romantic relationship, that there's something that is not good for you. I'm not sure it's going to kill you, but it could make you mentally or physically or emotionally ill. So that's one piece. Snake, or a snake, if a snake shows up, again, it could be a similar message if they're poisonous. You know, that pay attention to what's poisonous in your world or in your relationships. Interesting story about snake, or snakes, I should say, the physical being. A story I heard long ago, and I have researched like crazy to find this story again. I think it was the Apache Nation that at one time, and forgive me if I'm, miscounting this, but the story's a great story, is that when someone was considered to be probably a great healer, what the community would do would be to set up a circle, throw some rattlesnakes in the center, and the person would go in, and the others would drum and dance, drum or rattle, and the person that went in the center would be bitten maybe a few times by the rattlesnakes that were in there. Get this, Neil. If he survived, it might be she also, but we'll say if he survived the poison, he was considered to be a great healer. How's that? Now, fortunately, those of us who are healers, we don't have to go through quite that rigorous of an initiation. More initiations like the story I told you earlier.
Right.
Let's get him on his knees, and knock him upside the head so we can get his attention, and they did. So snake is often when snake comes to you in some way, it signifies that you are a healer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also work with snake and snake medicine as a healer without ever talking to anybody else about it. I was led in my first experience with a close-in spirit animal, which is called a power animal in shamanism. It's a term also, again, even non-shamanic, you're not interested, you can still develop a relationship with a spirit animal as a power animal. I was introduced in some men's event to snake. It's okay, there's a spirit animal coming to you. What is it? Oh, I'm a snake. Oh, okay. And actually, my daughter, I inherited a boa constrictor from her. A couple of years after that, it was interesting. I read a book, a fabulous book that I read like 3 times, The Cosmic Serpent. And the subtitle is A Connection Between DNA and Shamanism. And the premise was interesting, Neil, that shamans in days of old, they didn't have a prototype or an image of DNA because they didn't, at that time, what was it? Nobody had any concept or even close to it. But what they would get is images of snakes, sometimes intertwined. Notice that if you look around a little bit, in so many cultures, Jeremy Narby, the author, researched this, where snake appears.
Mm-hmm.
The Canadian Medical Association, the AMA, again, and the intertwined serpents for these shamans had to be snakes. But what they were looking at was DNA.
Yep.
And so that makes a lot of sense too. So a snake comes to you. It's very possible you're a healer. Could be, again, poisonous. Mm-hmm. If it's poisonous, again, I already mentioned that's a possibility. But that the snake spirit can be a great ally for any healing work that you might do, whether it's personal or you are a healer operating on behalf of others. I'll tell you how significant it was for me. My first and only tattoo I've ever gotten.
Nice.
The intertwined serpents. And you see it up here. It's a friend of mine, Jeremy Narby in Australia, who painted this. He actually painted both of these. But the tattoo artist took that off of this painting, and it's with me. It has some other significance too, but again, the intertwined serpents.
Yeah, and it's called the caduceus, is the intertwined serpents. Throughout ancient history, and even the Sumerian scriptures have the serpents, and the scholars of the Sumerians also said that it was a representation of DNA.
Yeah, and it is just fascinating how shamans long ago knew this and worked with snake spirit and snake medicine.
Yeah.
And it really is. Anybody who's doing any healing, I invite you to also check it out with snake. Again, you can
Yeah.
communicate. That's the other thing. You can communicate with spirit animals. There can be a
Yes.
back and forth, not just, okay, what's the message? But let's talk. Let's
Mm.
talk about this. What more can you tell me or teach me?
Yeah. Just one more thing on the snake, because I love that
Sure.
concept. Is the snakes actually are the only animal without a pineal gland, without a third eye. Every other animal has a pineal gland on Earth. So it's
Yeah,
very interesting.
that
Maybe
is
because they're
interesting.
already enlightened. That means
Yeah, you would think. Again, we go back to some of the stories about snakes. Like the most famous one that we're familiar with is the Garden of Eden, where the
yes.
snake was demonized.
Yeah.
Was considered to be a representative of the devil.
Hmm.
And to me, what that is, and also the shame that was brought up about being
Yes.
naked, being in the natural world.
Right, right.
Here's my premise, and I may have read this somewhere, I don't know, but snakes are like right close to the earth, about as close as you can get to
Mm.
any animal that crawls or slithers along like that.
Hmm.
So, what that tale tells us too is that the earth is wicked, mean, and nasty,
Hmm.
and you better be careful. And if you listen to an animal
Right.
and do what the animal says, what happens? You get punished.
Punished. Yeah.
You get kicked out of the garden. And
Yep. Yep.
that's a deep, that's a metaphor, a
Yeah.
mythology, if you want to call it that. But I think there's deeper layers of meaning to that. Not just that, did that actually happen? Who knows?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so, but that's not the point. Joseph Campbell is one of the greatest human beings ever to grace the planet. But he talks about this, and anybody wants to check into it, just check out Bill Moyer's interview with Joseph Campbell. But he understands mythology, and he explains the mythology, that they're
Hmm.
essential stories that will help us weave our way through life.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty good way to put it. So it's a mythology that can work, but unfortunately, I think there's a layer of meaning to it
Yeah.
that we need to take a look at. That the demon was this critter
Hmm.
that crawled on the earth.
Yeah.
And why are we being kicked out of the garden?
Right. Right.
All those kind of questions. Anyway, enough of that.
It's so interesting. So I'm curious, has your background in psychology assisted you in this awareness, shamanism, and animals?
It really has, Neil. Thanks. That's a really good question. Um, I had a good therapy practice. People kept showing up. That's how I tell. I must be doing
Hmm.
okay work. Because people kept showing up. And I just enough after I was introduced to shamanism, for a while there, that's all I did. I was really so focused on shamanic healing and shamanism and writing about it, etc., that I sort of did this with all of my training and studies as a therapist. And then I'd say, about 6, 7 years ago, roughly, it was almost like one of those, like, no,
Hmm.
baby with the bathwater. Don't cast out the baby with the bathwater. I have some great skills that I learned along the way, and especially skills around trauma and trauma recovery, which is oh boy, it's becoming a household word right now, and we're
Hmm.
understanding trauma. And there's several teachers that are out there, doing a great job.
Hmm.
And understanding, one, that trauma lives in the body. That's where we got to start with. That the frozen aspects of us, that are the residuals of having to hold tight, during a traumatic experience. It's natural, have it, and I'm talking about not just childhood trauma, although that's where we're most affected, but even if you had a traffic accident, you rolled the car, your body's still going to be into a position of a defensive position, and there's going to be some residual freezing that's there. That's phenomenal, to understand that and to work with that. Somatic experiencing, Peter Levine, anybody wants to look it up. But there's Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps a Score. There's some really good stuff out there. Now, having gone into shamanism, I learned a different process for healing trauma. And that process is the basic premise was, when you're traumatized, your soul leaves your body, or an aspect of your soul. If your soul leaves, that's it, gang. You're done with this. Move on to the next, But there's an aspect of your soul, or a fragmentation of your soul. And after the traumatic experience is complete and there's a sense of safety, it's possible that soul fragment may come back in. But often what happens is that part remains outside of your overall soul. And so the job of the shamanic practitioner is to, with the help and the guidance definitely of the helping spirits, is to go find that piece and bring it back. And that's the paradigm for soul retrieval. Wow, I got to tell you, Neil, I've done, oh God, I don't know how many, I don't even want to count, but several soul retrievals, and I'm amazed at how effective it is. And then synthesizing that with other approaches, what I typically do if I'm doing healing work is I pay attention. What's most needed here? Okay, close my eyes. Okay, help me out here. Thank you. And then I do what I'm instructed to do.
Do you facilitate, or are you getting it done for yourself?
Oh, I facilitate. I've had soul retrieval done two different times, and it was very significant. But I'm talking about as a shamanic healer. I've been trained as, I can do that. That may be what the client is seeking. They've heard about it, or they want to do some healing work, and they understand that I'm not only I'm a psychotherapist, but I'm also a shamanic healer. So kind of get to pick and choose, in a sense, or at least see what they're drawn to that I can offer.
Yeah. And a lot of this awareness is in your book, right? So let's pull your book up one more time here and show everybody. And
all right, Common Sentience.
For everybody who's joining in, didn't hear in the beginning, this is part of a project with Sacred Stories, and one of the books in this project with Common Sentience series is on animals, and Dr. Stephen Farmer is the author of it, and we're going into some of this awareness here that he's sharing in the book and more. And so now let's get into something that a few people have been asking in the YouTube. Can you share some examples from the experiences that people had that are in your book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's one that brought me to tears, and it's the story of an animal communicator. And I'm not technically, I'm not an animal communicator. I am a spirit animal communicator. But this animal communicator, Laura Rowley, tells the story of being called to a horse that had a large tumor on its body, on his body. And she tuned in the way that animal communicators do. And I've known quite a few, so I understand. Scout, no. Stop. Sorry. And so what she did is tuned in the horse, and she heard in her inner voice, in the communication from the horse, I took it from her. And she's going, what? I took it from her. That's all the horse communicated. What she found out is a 15-year-old, I think it's a 15-year-old girl that was her horse, had an inoperable brain tumor. And when they checked, the last time they checked, the brain tumor had disappeared. And go back to the horse. The horse's love that transcended any kind of love we can imagine, sacrificed himself by taking the tumor from her. And then he was put to rest, put to sleep, euthanized. That was like a tearjerker, like, wow. Yeah, that was a wow kind of a story. The coyote, the cat, and the crows. Judy Lemon wrote a story that talks about that. Her cat, Lulu. Excuse me one second. Go on out. I can't hear you doing that right now. That her cat Lulu was she ran out she heard a bunch of crows, and she ran out there, and a coyote had jumped the fence and had Lulu in his mouth, and so she scared the coyote, dropped Lulu. but Lulu had some pretty serious injuries.
Mm.
And she realizes that there was a connection with all the crows going, squawking, and that to indicate to her she needed to act on something, she took Lulu to the vets. The vet couldn't save her. She was getting ready to go on a trip 2 days later, and so she was like in a quandary what to do. And what she got was that actually Lulu ended up having a lot of internal cysts or something like that that would
Yeah.
eventually kill her. And so she made the choice, and I think the right choice is to euthanize Lulu, much to her sadness. And when she was at the vet, she also noticed that there was a number of crows outside, flying around. So the
Yeah.
crows almost like were leading her to the vets and saying, farewell. And it's always sad to have to put an, like the horse, Lulu, the cat. It's always sad to have to put an animal down. We
Yeah.
put them to sleep. No, we don't. We euthanize them, But frankly, Neil, between you and I, if I had inoperable something or other, I'd go, okay, give me the pills, give me a glass of wine or two or a bottle. I've had a good life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's an aside. I know it has nothing to do with animals, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like keeping somebody alive at all costs. Come on, guys. Personally, it's not up to me about anybody else, but personally, no. If I'm ready to check out, I'll check out.
Yeah.
So I think that it's actually a very humane act, like the horse with the major tumor, like with Lulu, who had not only the injuries of the coyote, but some internal illness that was creating cysts throughout her body,
Yeah.
cancerous cysts, by the way. So those are a couple of stories. They're really there's just so many. I can think of two or three more, but you get the gist of it.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
I'm the featured author. I've got a couple of stories in there too, but really,
Yeah.
it's more that I've got a reputation, I guess you'd say, or I'm known for this, just
Right.
like you are known for sound. So, naturally, Ariel did a good job picking us. Let's put it that way.
She did, yeah. She's done a great job. And so the Common Sentience series, everybody, if you want to learn more about the book, if you want to get Dr. Stephen Farmer's book, the links are in the description of YouTube. This is also going to be on our podcast. So if you're listening to Portal to Ascension Radio, hello, and do check out the description for the links. And there's a full series. So go to the website, take a look at what's going on. And the whole thing is when we did a panel a week or two ago, I think it was, we were talking about how the mystical is going mainstream. That's really the bottom line of this series. The reason why there's so many people contributing their stories on all these mystical things, from sound to angels to animals to shamanism and beyond, is for us to really have people realize, as they get this book and read these stories, that this is a reality, not just some just abstract concept that we're just talking about, but this is actually occurring. And so if you want to read more and get into some of these stories as well, please do pick up Dr. Stephen Farmer's book. Again, the link is in the description. So last question for you. Curious, what does reciprocity have to do with when it comes to communicating with animals, the give and take?
A really good question. It actually, what made me, where I came up with that term or I read it was in Robin Wall Kimmerer's excellent book, Braiding Sweetgrass.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a biologist as well as Native American, so she's got, again, both fields to draw from. One of the things that we need to bring into our consciousness more and more, in my opinion, is that idea of the exchange, another way to exchange. But I like that word better, reciprocal, that we reciprocate to the animals, for instance, for the gifts that they bring us. Their love, their attention, like that little dog that I had to boot out of here because he was barking. But he's just a sweetheart and a lover, he snuggles with us and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what's the reciprocity with that dog? Well, we take care of him. He brings a lot of love, playfulness,
Yes.
those kind of things that we need to reciprocate. So when people start working with spirit animals, I often suggest give back to the animals. Something. It could be time, attention, donations, etc. Certain organizations, Humane
Yeah.
Society, to mention just one of the U.S., Defenders of Wildlife, Oceana. These are organizations I've checked out and I contribute to. And there's more. Don't get me wrong; those aren't the only three, but there's a reciprocity that goes. I thank the animals and the spirit animals, for guiding me along the way, for providing that companionship, for providing the teachings, etc. Even thanking the animals, while it's a more abstract than a physical act of some sort, it still counts.
Hmm.
In fact, all my prayers, I'd say 90% of them at least, are prayers of thanks. And I think that's a good one to
Yeah.
incorporate. It reminds me to be grateful, for the amazing gifts that are available to us. So reciprocity is simply that, Neil. It's just giving back, something.
Yeah.
Um, and it's easy to do. It's not that easy to do. That's a principle that, without calling it reciprocity, again, indigenous people and our long ago ancestors just practiced automatically.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that because when you were going down the list of different ways to do the energy exchange, the first thing that came to my head was the easiest energy exchange is simply gratitude, right? Because all you got to, like, you don't just take a message and be like, "Be gone, animal." It's more like
Yeah,
the message comes to you, and then the gratitude for that lesson, right? You seeing a bunny cross your path every day for the next week, and there's no bunnies in your area. So you're like, what's going on here? Well, the universe is sending me some sort of message. Thank you for it, right? So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
pure
Good point,
energy.
Neil. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Yeah.
highlighted that too. Yeah, just to be grateful. We need more of that in the world in general. I think
Yeah.
gratitude, appreciation, expressing it in words and in actions,
Yep. Yep.
and certainly with this area here with spirit animals. Yeah, um, the animals need our help. The Humane Society example is doing it. It's just an outstanding job of rescuing animals that are distressed, that are abandoned. People take on rescue dogs or rescue cats, rescue animals. What a give back that is.
Yeah.
What a reciprocal statement is to do it consciously and with awareness that this is, they're not just ours for the taking. Too long, I
Yes.
think that's what's happened, is, oh, the earth, sure. Look at all the stuff we can get from the earth.
We own it all.
Yeah, we own it ours. I like it when I hear people saying our earth.
Yeah.
It's not ours. We're guests. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
I could go on and on about that, but yeah, we
Yes.
are
Yes.
guests.
Well, thank you so much, brother. And I just want to read a couple of comments. We had lots of actually amazing, amazing comments in the chat. Lots of thank yous. But Cosmic Utopian says, "Thank you so much for the compassion and special sharing today." Ali says, "I could listen all night," and this is really a topic that a lot of people are interested in. Because a lot of us, I would say, love animals, so it's right up all of our alleys.
Well,
So,
I want
Dr.
to thank
Form,
everybody who's tuning in, to the live and also to the recording. So thank you all, and thank you for your love and compassion that you
mhm.
bring, especially to the animals, but to your world. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Farmer. And again, everybody, the link's in the description, so go ahead and check it out. And that's it for today. I just want to quickly tell everyone that I'm going to be going live more often. We're going to have some amazing interviews lined up. And for the next 10 months, because I think there's 10 authors in this series, plus or minus a couple, I'm going to have a different author from this Common Sentience series. So you're going to get an in-depth look of not only the individuals that wrote these, the main authors of these books, but we're also going to go into some of these stories and just do what our portal to ascension really is, which is just to bring all this out into the mainstream so we can realize that the limited perspective we've had of this third dimension has been limited, and there's so much more out there, and we're just diving into that. As time progresses, as the consciousness evolution continues, more and more of this is going to be common knowledge, and imagine a world where that is the case. It's going to be incredible.
And I want to just say one final thank you to you,
Yes,
Neil,
please.
for the work that you're bringing into the world. Thank you so hard. I can tell you're just really on purpose. So
Thank you, man.
thanks.
I
Yeah, you
appreciate
got
it.
it, Mal.
All right, everybody. So thank you again, and we'll see you later. Okay. Have a good night.